Episode 4 of The Americas is called The Amazon, and it's about the Amazon. I do find it a bit funny how this episode is basically about a massive area which contains multiple countries, and we've got at least 3 episodes about the United States. Definitely some bias going on here, because the Amazon consists of more or less the first half of South America. It's all contained to this one episode for the most part. There is almost a bit of a whistle stop tour of some of the big headliners from the Amazon. Like in the intro, they're like, right, here's some jaguar, here's some anaconda, here's some capybara, which I think are obviously, iconic animals when you think of the Amazon. What I like is that they're in the episode, but they're not a focus point in this episode. What I do like about this episode is that because it had to focus up so much, it does focus on things that I think were worth focusing on more. So the first major bit of footage we get is about giant river turtles, which is not an animal I think I've seen before, to be honest. I don't think I've seen them in a series before. If I have, it hasn't really stuck with me. And this was a really interesting sequence. For starters, they are massive. I wasn't used to seeing turtles that big in the water, to be honest with you, that aren't sea turtles. And them laying their eggs in the sand, that's all fine. What's really good though is when the turtles hatch and they can't really get out until the water comes in and softens up the sand. And when that happens, there's caimans lying in wait. Watching the turtles go down to the water to escape the predators was really cool. The comparison in size between the baby turtles and the caimans was great. Caimans I don't think are actually that intimidating normally. Compared to crocodiles or alligators, they're probably the least sort of scary crocodilians. Just because they don't feel like they can really do any real damage to people, although maybe they could. In this sequence though, they did a really good job of making them seem scary because they were massive. It was really good, and the fact that they're not even really biting the turtles, they're just swallowing them whole. So it's quite good, very effective. Also the fact that we're no stranger to seeing baby turtles, hatching and going into the water and getting attacked by predators. It's a very different kind of version of a sequence we've seen so many times before in other species. So that was a really good sequence and a really good way of opening the episode. I really liked that. And then we explore the flooded forest. Again, another whistle stop tour. We see piranhas, we see botos. Again, animals you think of when you think of the forest flooding, but they don't really focus on them. Instead, we focus on giant river otters, which are an animal that I think we're all aware of. We know that they live in the forest, but we don't ever really see them in these series. So I like how the light was shown on them quite a bit. We just see them working together to catch fish and bring them back to the little baby otter. And it's kind of sad, you look at the cub being left behind. He's looking for his family and he gets reunited with them. That's nice. Again, it's not a sequence that I would say was particularly groundbreaking. It was cool seeing the otters because we don't see them very often. While the footage wasn't, something that blew me away, I still enjoyed it because it's an animal I don't see very often. Then we move more into the forest and we explore the undergrowth, the smaller animals that live there, and we follow army ants. So army ants again are probably the most famous insects that live in the Amazon, I'm gonna say, and they're pretty impressive. I mean, they're always pretty impressive. They're pretty scary because they are pretty much an unstoppable force. Again, this isn't anything I haven't seen before, but it's a sequence that's pretty reliable. You basically see other insects that are staying still until the ants get them, being torn apart. That's pretty horrific. The descriptions of that are quite interesting. I think that was quite effective. And then going to a wasp's nest. Wasps are generally insects you want to avoid, but the ants are just going in and taking their larvae. I've seen that before, but it was still cool to see it again. It's not a sequence that I've grown tired of over the years. So again, it's nice to see it. It's quite cool. And then we explore the canopy again, just seeing the animals that live there, macaws and stuff like that. Again, yet another whistle stop tour. And we focus on emperor tamarins for a bit. They did kind of hype up that we haven't seen them before, and we actually have. They were definitely in Life of Mammals, and I think the sequence in that series was better. I feel like here it kind of hyped up how mysterious they were, and we just see their babies jumping around the canopy. It was fine, like the rest of the episode. It's an animal that I don't see very often, so yeah. Pretty cool to see here. Also in the canopy, we see harpy eagles. So again, we have seen them before, and we have seen this behaviour before, whereby we see a pair that's basically looking after their chick. Seeing harpy eagles are great. They did a really good job of focusing on their talons quite a bit, especially the talons next to the chicks. So you can really see that, they are pretty formidable. One wrong step and the chick might die. Very interesting. And again, the male going out to bring back prey but not succeeding kind of alludes to a greater environmental threat towards them, and that isn't really explored too much. We also see that what happens when the weather turns, because obviously the Amazon is very wet. It is a rainforest after all. And because they nest so high up in the canopy, the chicks are very at risk of exposure, so it is crucial that the parents do cover it. That was good. You did feel like there was a threat, which I think there isn't always in these kind of sequences. And at the end of the sequence, the male brings some prey, which is nice. It kind of did tease the fact that the chick might not have made it through the night. At no point did I feel like that was the case. I was kind of like, okay, of course the chick survived. They're not going to show a dead chick. Like, I just wouldn't make it in. And obviously, while it's nice that the chick survived, I didn't feel there was any real tension there, which is again something I generally feel in a lot of these series nowadays, that there isn't that tension there that maybe was there a few years ago. But still, it was a good sequence. It was nice in harpy eagles. We don't see them that often. And while they were doing something I've seen before, it was still cool to see it again. So like the army ants, I'm not bored of them. They were cool. And we do kind of explore deforestation. Zooms out, you see the map of the Amazon as it was, and now it's now been, completely overgrazed. What I did like though was that they talked about the actual dangers of losing the Amazon rainforest. Because the Amazon rainforest is responsible for the entire weather system of South America, it generates most of the moisture, which becomes rain. And while a lot of South America has become farmland, especially cattle ranching, they are dependent of that rain. And as they continue to destroy the forest, it's only going to hurt them. I don't know how many people are aware of it, but it is something that I think is, pretty understood, but it's never talked about that much. So I liked how they actually did discuss it here because, I think it's a pretty important thing. And the Amazon rainforest is probably one of the most single important habitats in the planet, just because of the impact it has for an entire continent and obviously wider reaching as well. So I think it's well we're aware that getting rid of the Amazon is bad, and that it's probably one of the things that we're heading the closest to with regards to like environmental disasters. That's probably going to happen before the ice caps melting, to be honest. So yeah, I'm very glad they talked about that. Then we move to the Pantanal, which is the massive wetland. Again, really cool place. Again, another little whistle stop tour of the same animals, jaguars, anacondas, capybaras, the same stuff. Here we focus on caimans though. This episode was a very caiman heavy episode, I think, considering they're the badges at the start and they're the goodies at the end. It was quite cool. It was basically the mating season. The males are calling and making the ripples in the water to attract females. It's quite cool. It's kind of funny when the male just kind of flopped on his back. I'm not really sure why or what caused that, to be honest with you. But he seemed to, recover, and the female went for him, so that was nice. That's a good way of ending the episode, because again, that's not an animal I see very often. To be honest with you, caimans are always around in these sequences, but they're never the focus, which is kind of how I feel about a lot of the animals in this episode. I feel like a lot of animals did get their time to shine, so that was cool. So yeah, this episode is pretty good, to be honest with you. It was pretty consistent, considering it's an episode about the Amazon, which you kind of feel like you could have got a couple episodes out of that, just because, it's such a big area. And because they had to condense so much into one episode, I like how they did choose examples that did represent the habitats in the Amazon, and I like how they chose animals that we don't see very often, generally speaking, like things like the river turtles or the giant river otters or the caimans, animals you don't see too often, doing similar things that we see other animals do. I think in a series like this, in an episode like this, which they could just go with the heavy hitters, the jaguars, the anacondas, the capybara, they chose to acknowledge them, but they didn't focus on them. They chose to focus on other animals. I think that was a smart decision, to be honest, and it made the episode probably better. It didn't just feel like yet another Amazon episode. It just felt like a very different Amazon episode, which I think was quite good. So yeah, this episode, pretty good. Highlights for me were probably the river turtles at the beginning, the harpy eagles as well, the army ants. I mean, it was all pretty good, to be honest with you. Let me know what you thought of this episode. What were your highlights? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be doing the next one next week. Again, don't know what it is, so I'll look forward to that. And as ever, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, or don't if you don't want to. I will survive. If you don't, it's fine. See you next week, and goodbye.